When you hear the word chivalry, what comes to mind? Probably a knight in shining armor, right? A hero saving a damsel in distress. It's an image of honor, virtue, and a touch of romance. For centuries, that's been the picture we've been sold, from epic poems to blockbuster movies. But here's the thing, that image is mostly a fantasy. It's a carefully built ideal that smooths over a much more complicated and often brutal reality. The knights we see in pop culture probably never really existed, but the idea of them, the symbol they became, was one of the most powerful social and political tools ever created. So, let's forget the gleaming armor for a second. Instead, picture the world that created the knight, a chaotic, violent place where life was often short and power was usually taken by force. A warrior class rose to the top, and that created a problem. These fighters were so incredibly violent that society needed a code to keep them in check. Chivalry wasn't born out of romance, it was born out of pure necessity. It was an attempt by the church and rulers to put a leash on their own warrior class. If it wasn't just about being a hero, then what was it all about? We're going to explore the historical, literary, and modern meanings behind the code of chivalry. We'll uncover how it was more than just a set of rules. It was a complex symbolic language used to build armies, justify power, and shape our very idea of what it means to be noble, honorable, and good. The chivalric code, which really started taking shape between the 12th and 13th centuries, was a moral system that tried to mix a warrior's spirit with Christian faith and good manners. On paper, the rules were noble. First, a knight had to be a skilled and brave fighter, not just for his own glory, but to show off his elite status. This was mixed with Christian piety. Knights were presented as defenders of the faith, with their battles given a divine purpose. They were also expected to be loyal to their lord, protect the weak, and be courteous, especially to noble women. But here's the central contradiction of chivalry. The ideal rarely matched reality. The code was filled with paradoxes that people even pointed out at the time. For instance, the same code that told a knight to protect the innocent also celebrated extreme violence. This created a strange kind of moral logic, where being violent was a way of showing virtue. Many knights were notoriously cruel, and the politeness they showed to noble ladies definitely didn't apply to peasant women, who were often treated horribly without any consequences. So, was the code a complete failure? Not if you consider its other goals. Chivalry was basically a brand. It was a lifestyle guide for the aristocracy designed to do one thing very well: separate the nobles from everyone else. It created a special social class, an exclusive club of warriors on horseback who saw themselves as better than everyone else. The rules, even when they were broken, just reinforced the idea that there were two types of people: the noble, chivalrous elite, and the ordinary people they ruled. It was a system of social control, just dressed up in the language of honor. To really get how chivalry worked as a symbolic language, you have to look at how it was expressed visually. A knight wasn't just a soldier, he was a walking, riding symbol of power, and every piece of his gear was meant to show off his status. Let's start with the armor. It wasn't just for protection. As armor got more advanced, the polished steel plates became a canvas for identity. Shields and banners were covered in heraldry, a complex visual system of colors and animals that identified a knight's family, alliances, and reputation on a chaotic battlefield. A lion didn't just look fierce, it symbolized courage and a warrior family line. An eagle could represent nobility. These weren't just pretty pictures, they were logos that instantly told you who was who. But maybe the most powerful symbol wasn't the armor, but the horse. The word chivalry itself comes from the French chevalier, which means horseman. The war horse, or destrier, was a huge, expensive, and highly trained animal that only the rich could afford. Symbolically, it did something incredibly important. It physically lifted the knight above other men. This wasn't just a literal height difference, it was a constant, visible reminder of the knight's social superiority. To see a knight on his horse was to see the social order in physical form. The horse was a key part of the knight's identity, symbolizing his nobility, wealth, and power. Even the armor made for horses, called barding, was often decorated, turning the animal into a moving sculpture and an icon of power. If the battlefield was where chivalry was put to the test, it was in literature that its symbols were created and shared with the world. The ideals of chivalry were made popular through epic poems and romances, which were basically the blockbuster movies of the Middle Ages. Stories like The Song of Roland and the legends of King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table weren't just for fun. They were a form of cultural propaganda. They showed knights as perfect examples of virtue, creating an idealized image that shaped the values of the nobility. These stories are full of symbolism. The knight's quest, a classic theme, was often a metaphor for a spiritual or moral journey. The challenges, from dragons to evil sorcerers, stood for the internal and external struggles a person has to overcome to become virtuous. The famous quest for the Holy Grail, for example, is packed with religious and moral symbolism, representing the tough path to spiritual enlightenment. But literature was also where the code's built-in tensions were explored. The most famous example is Sir Lancelot. His story is a perfect storm of conflicting chivalric duties. He's the greatest knight, the model of loyalty and fighting skill, but his love for Queen Guinevere makes him betray his king, Arthur. This love triangle perfectly shows the clash between personal desire and social duty, between courtly love and feudal loyalty. Authors like Geoffrey Chaucer took this even further, both celebrating and poking fun at chivalry. He used characters like his knight in the Canterbury Tales to comment on the gap between the chivalric ideal and the often self-serving reality of human nature. These stories prove that even medieval audiences knew that the code of chivalry was an ideal that was inspiring, but often impossible to live up to. The era of knights in shining armor is long gone, but the symbolic language of chivalry is still woven into our culture. You can find its echoes in our manners, our ethics, and our entertainment. The very idea of a gentleman is a direct descendant of chivalry. When someone holds a door open, it's often seen as a modern act of chivalry, a gesture that comes from the principle of protecting others. While some people see these acts as old-fashioned or even condescending, they started with a code that, in theory, valued respect and courtesy. This legacy goes way beyond simple manners. Modern military codes are filled with chivalric principles. The call for honor, courage, integrity, and the protection of non-combatants is a direct continuation of the attempt to create an ethical guide for warriors. The idea of an officer and a gentleman links military leadership directly to a personal code of conduct, just like chivalry did centuries ago. Chivalry also keeps popping up in our cultural debates, especially about masculinity and heroism. The classic knight in shining armor is still alive in pop culture, from Superman to Captain America characters who represent self-sacrifice, justice, and protecting the innocent. They are modern-day knights following a non-religious version of the chivalric code. At the same time, the concept is often criticized for promoting outdated gender roles. This ongoing conversation shows just how powerful and long-lasting these symbols are. They've changed, but they haven't disappeared. They force us to keep rethinking what it means to be honorable, what it means to be a hero, and how we should treat each other. So chivalry was never just one simple thing. It was a messy mix of ideals and reality. It was a practical code for warriors, a set of aspirational virtues, a political tool for social control, and a deep well of fantasy for literature. But more than anything, it was a symbolic language. The armor, the horse, the heraldry, the quest. These were all words in a vocabulary designed to communicate power, status, and a specific way of seeing the world. It was a system that told people who was in charge and why, wrapping the harsh truths of feudal power in a cloak of honor and divine right. This symbolic system was so powerful that it has outlasted the world that made it. It has adapted and evolved, leaving its mark on our ethics, our manners, and our stories. It shows us how societies build and share their deepest values, and how those symbolic ideas can stick around for 1,000 years. The language of chivalry is all around us, often in ways we don't even recognize anymore. So, we want to ask you, what symbols of chivalry do you see in the world today? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching. You've just joined the Renaissance Spirit, a channel dedicated to a just, equitable, and humanitarian world. Here, we explore history, politics, culture, religion, personal growth, and the lessons of civilization, from ancient Rome to modern America. We believe the Renaissance isn't over. It's waiting inside anyone who chooses curiosity, courage, and conscience. Living the Renaissance spirit means engaging with history as a dialogue, not just with the past, but with the future. Our work is a message to posterity. Will they inherit justice and wisdom, or wonder why we failed to act? Subscribe, turn on notifications, and take our Renaissance quiz to see if you carry the spark. Because if history is collapsing in real time, someone has to narrate the fall and plant the seeds of what comes after. Live the Renaissance spirit. History has not died, only our understanding of it